Hello, friends, fans, foes, and everything in between. So, Nathan Marchand here, and I'm about to jump down from my notes. Aha, won't do it live. So, I figured what I might want to start doing is maybe instead of just constantly doing shorts for movie reviews, I might do some, slightly more true long form stuff here. And talk about, whatever new movies that I've seen instead of just saving them for, say, Spotlight, but I digress episodes, and I can save those for other things. So, I'm a week late to the party, forgive me, but I am here to give you my semi-immediate thoughts on The Mandalorian and Grogu, because I just got back to the theater about, 20 minutes or so ago. Had to get some things ready to record this. And yeah, I know it's been out for a week, and the discourse is everyone's probably moved on. I will admit, the theater I went to tonight, I don't normally go to movies on Friday nights, but it just had to happen this time around. I gotta say, it was a pretty well-attended theater for, a second Friday of a movie's release. It was probably about 2/3 full. I don't know what it was like last week for opening weekend and, Memorial Day weekend and all of that fun stuff. But anyway, it was well-attended. There was a dad with his, I'm guessing maybe like 12-year-old daughter who was there. Clearly was a big fan of Grogu, as I would expect. Grogu has a major fan base with girls and young ladies, as I would expect. But regardless, we had like I said, it was well attended. There were a couple of nerdy guys sitting next to me who were talking about it, and so like I said, it was a good crowd. But what about the movie itself? Because the movie is suffering. It's suffering from the fact that people are just disappointed with Star Wars, and there are people who are actively watching this movie fail, or they want it to fail so they could sit there and just gloat over it, laugh at it, whatever. And I have to say, I think that's incredibly unfair, especially if they want somebody like Dave Filoni or Jon Favreau, who directed this and co-wrote it, to be in charge of Star Wars. You kind of have to support this if you want to get basically him on to potentially save the franchise. I have some mixed feelings about that, but regardless, it's a conundrum. I wanted to see it because, one, I'm a fan of the Mandalorian the TV show. By far the best thing, other than Rogue One, I would say, to come out of the Disney era of Star Wars in terms of what we're seeing on screen anyway, at least out of what I've seen, because I haven't seen everything. That being said, is this the movie that is going to save Star Wars as a movie franchise? Because this is the first Star Wars movie in 7 years. And unfortunately, while I would say the movie is good, it's not necessarily going to save it. It's not that good. If you like the non-spoiler portion of this, I will say, is that if you like the Mandalorian TV show, even if you were disappointed with season 3, as I kind of was, go see this. You'll be happy. Is it perfect? No. Is it the best Star Wars movie ever? No, I don't think anyone who's going into this thinking that that's going to happen is silly. Is it the best Disney Star Wars movie? It's certainly in the running, I would say. Its only real competition, I would say, is Rogue One, but, I'm not necessarily here to start arguing that. So, in terms of plot, what do we have going on here? The thing about this movie's plot is that it's almost too complicated. this was clearly originally meant to be a 4th season of the Mandalorian TV show that they then condensed into a 2-hour movie. So a lot happens. Now, to its benefit, I think this actually kind of shows that the streaming format of making ostensibly, an 8, 9, 10-hour movie that gets broken up into 10 chapters that you have to watch week to week, I think it's really showing that format needs to be rethought quite a bit, because if this really was a condensed TV season, it benefits from being extremely focused on 2 primary characters, namely the title characters. And there are some things. Let's stick with the plot here. So it boils down to Mando has been hired by the New Republic to go find an Imperial criminal that they want to apprehend. Used to be in the Empire's forces, but in order to do that, he has to get information from the brother, I believe it's the brother and sister. Yeah, because it was aunt and uncle. The brother and sister of Jabba the Hutt, to go find his son, who has become a gladiator. And then, so he has to go get him to get information. And then there's all of these complications that come in with that. But then the crazy thing is, at several points in the movie, once you think that it's over or we're going to come to the ending, another connected subplot kind of comes in. It really does, and I think I understand now why the advertising with this, like at least like the posters and all of that, have been presenting it more like an old school film serial, because that's what this feels like. You could say that it's a handful of TV episodes strung together, but I think they were trying to go for, at least trying to present it like it's a film serial that's been edited together. And in terms of that, that is definitely going back to Star Wars' roots in that regard. And because Flash Gordon was a big inspiration on George Lucas for the original Star Wars. And I'm kind of doing this in like the 4 quadrants, so we're talking about plot right now, and I'll break down some more stuff related to that when we get to style. So on one hand, it's really focused. On the other hand, a lot gets crammed into this. I will say it's never boring, and it's just moving. It's clipping along from one thing to the next. So I would definitely say you're not going to be bored with this. But like I said, it's far from a simple plot. Now, let's move on to characters. So the title characters in this are excellent. Oh, I should also mention, in terms of plot, the thing that's weird about this is that you do have to go. This is not entirely self-contained. You do need to go into this having seen, I would say, at least the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian. If not all 3. You could probably... It doesn't really do anything with stuff that happened in season 3, so you could probably just watch the first 2 seasons. You would be fine. Which is probably good, because like I said, season 3 was a bit of a letdown. Actually, you probably should see all 3, because there's some cliffhanger stuff at the end of season 2. So yeah, basically you gotta watch all 3 seasons. Never mind. But so that is probably the biggest problem that it has, is that you can't just go into it cold necessarily. Even though there is a little bit, you don't have the scroll up text like in most Star Wars movies, but there is some text that pops up to kind of lay the groundwork for you. But, that's beside the point. So that is probably its biggest weakness. So in terms of the title characters, they're excellent in this. If you've seen the show, you know exactly what to expect. Do either one of them grow over the course of this movie? No. They are static characters in this. Is that necessarily a mark of bad writing? Not necessarily. There have been plenty of great stories with static characters. And, but there was development for them in the show. Now, we do get a bunch of new characters. We have, I hope I say it right, it's Rama, the son of Jabba the Hutt. And I got to give them credit. They try some new things with Rama in this. For one thing, he's a jacked Hutt because he was a gladiator, because he doesn't want to be his dad. He wants to be anything but his dad. And so he's got his own arc in this. And I think that is something that people might be missing with their criticisms of this, is that, well, I'll get to that in the style section, I think. But the reason why the Mandalorian and Grogu can remain, well, and particularly Mando can remain static characters, is because in some ways it's more about the other characters, not necessarily them. Because Rama definitely has a character arc in this. So I really enjoyed him. And we have Zeb from Rebels. So if you've seen Rebels, that, it's great seeing him voiced by Steve Bloom, one of my favorite voice actors. So I can't complain there. So that's always great. Now, could you have not seen Rebels and just be like, oh, look, it's Mando's psychic? You probably could, a psychic who's not, a Grogu. So I think it would be fine. He certainly fits with the rest of the Star Wars world in this. Sigourney Weaver is in this, playing a New Republic operative who gives Mando his orders and things like that. It's cool seeing her in this. You also get a cameo from, of all people, Martin Scorsese. It's kind of weird that Martin Scorsese's in this, but he's playing a CGI shopkeeper with 4 arms. At least I'm pretty sure that's who it was. I haven't looked it up. Like I said, this is kind of an immediate reaction thing. So it was interesting seeing him in here doing this. The trailers are a little bit misleading, particularly with the humor that's in this. There isn't nearly as much of that, we'll say, Marvel style, the millennial writing. I have opinions about that style humor. It's not. Like I said, the trailers are misleading. It's mostly played straight. There is some more. I would say it's actually got some more Star Wars style humor in this, but again, kind of jumping ahead a little bit. But so I would say solid work with that. But let's talk about the style of this. I have to say, out of any of the Disney Star Wars movies, this probably, other than maybe Rogue One, and even this I might say beats Rogue One in this regard, it really feels like a Star Wars movie, because Filoni and Favreau understand, I think, better than anybody else who has worked on Star Wars in the Disney era. They understand George Lucas's original vision. So like I said, you have humor in this that's more of a Star Wars style. The ships and everything, the way it's all implemented, it feels like watching particularly the original trilogy. I know some people will complain, it's like, oh, it's still leading to the Disney stuff. And maybe, that's an argument that you can make. I know there's talk about the, erasing the sequels from canon. And I think I would be fine with that, but I think you can leave The Mandalorian in, given where it's slotted in. But I digress. Yeah, wrong show. But the action feels very Star Wars style. We have it's a lot of there's some Easter eggs in this, probably some that I didn't even pick up on. There's a gladiatorial fight, mild spoiler, where we have this incredible homage to the holographic chess, quote unquote, game from the original movie. Even has some of the moves that get replicated, and it's those creatures. I thought that was really cool. So I can't complain there. And Mando's going around being cool. As I said, that this is definitely taken a lot from borrowing from it's the same sort of sources that Lucas would have done, because there's a lot of lone wolf. This is basically The Man with No Name, the Clint Eastwood characters in the Sergio Leone trilogy. It's the Dollars trilogy. Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and all that. And it's that plus Lone Wolf and Cub, but in space. And it really leans hard into that, because there are points, just like with the show, there are points where it really feels like a Western, with Mando basically being a gunfighter. And then we also have the samurai movie influence, because there's a lot of samurai stylings in this, and that was also part of the original movies. George Lucas modeled Boba Fett after the Man with No Name, and Mando is also a Mandalorian. And he took a lot from Kurosawa, and then now Lone Wolf and Cub wasn't Kurosawa, but it was still samurai films, and so it's taking a lot from that. So and like I said, there are scenes where it goes into the samurai movie territory. We have a new villain in this, another bounty hunter who works for our two villainous huts, who looks straight out of a samurai movie. He's CGI, but he's tall and thin, and he has the like, it's like a straw hat, so think Raiden from Mortal Kombat. He has that on there. He looks super cool. There's a lot of stuff in this that's super cool. The effects, I gotta say, in this, in terms of styling, this is one of the things that tells me that Favreau and Filoni understand Star Wars better than probably anybody else, because just like in the show, they used a lot more practical effects than you would expect. Most notably, Grogu is a puppet, just like Yoda was originally, and people have really liked that. They maintain that here. And there are some other characters who are done with practical effects, like the little goobers who work on the ship. They're in this, and they're practically done, which I think was really nice. And a lot of the creature effects, unless they had to use CGI, like the bounty hunter with the hat looked really thin. He was CGI because it's just much easier to do it that way. The creatures in the arena are mostly CGI because, again, it's just easier to do it that way. Rama, the hut, and the other two huts, they're CGI in this because they have to move around and do certain things. And so they are CGI, but it's very well done, I would say, CGI, with some excellent performances, particularly from the guy playing Rama. Now, and if you don't want a spoiler, turn away now. The most surprising special effects that we got in here is during the finale, when Mando and Grogu are doing this massive raid on the Hutt compound for two reasons. One, to make sure they don't retaliate and come after him again later, and also because they took Mando's helmet off, and anyone who sees a Mandalorian has to die. So he promised us, that they would have to die for seeing his face, and he was coming to fulfill that. But their throne room, I guess if you want to call it that, is being guarded by two 15-foot droids. And unless this is just really clever CGI that impeccably replicates this, these were stop motion. I'm not kidding you. Think Ray Harryhausen or Ed 209 from RoboCop. These droids, these massive droids, were stop motion with all of the herky-jerky movement that you would expect from that and everything. It is absolutely insane. I couldn't believe it. I was not expecting that. That alone was worth the price of admission, because nobody does this anymore. I want to know who did that stop motion. I think of the Rancor from back in the original movie. It was crazy, and I absolutely loved it. Loved it. That was probably my favorite part of this entire movie, was seeing old effects like that done again. Absolutely outstanding. One other, I don't know if this was part of it, but it might just be because I'm in Monster on Film Vault mode when I saw this. There was a lizard creature who was in the arena that I swear could have been inspired by a similar creature in a similar situation, I might add, an arena, in a funny little movie from Full Moon Pictures that took 30 years to make. Long story. That's called The Primevals. I don't know if this creature was inspired by that or not, but it was cool seeing it here. If it was or it wasn't. By the way, like I said, the action in this was excellent. We had a lot of different set pieces. We had a lot of different environments. We had an opening gambit that, just to show you how cool Mando and Grogu are and how well they work together. And that is a very George Lucas thing to do. Not necessarily opening gambit, but the variety of environments. It's because we have an ice world, we have a swamp world with which when they're in the swamp worlds where most of the end of the movie takes place. I wonder if that was meant to be an homage to the fact that Grogu is the same race as Yoda. We still don't know what the name of his race is, but whatever. So, there's, like I said, a bunch of little nods like that throughout it. So, the style, I would say, definitely works in this. It's the most Star Wars that we have gotten in a long time. Now, in terms of themes with this, a big theme in this is family. Some of the lines from the trailer are not in this, which was mildly disappointing. But we have Grogu looking up to Mando as his father, and he's training him and bringing him up. They got a new Razor Crest, by the way. That some people were wondering, how did they do that? Well, it's simple. They got another one, and and that's presented as a good relationship, whereas Rama is trying to not be his dad, so he's trying to do the complete opposite. But the family he does have is trying to kill him because he's supposed to be because he's the heir apparent to the criminal empire, but he wants nothing to do with that. So that creates all kinds of complications. By the way, one of the coolest things that this movie did is we got to see a Hutt get into fights, not only in the arena, but then he fights his aunt and uncle at the end of it. So if you ever wanted to see a fight between Hutts, this is the movie for you. There's a lot of rolling because they're slugs, and a lot of squishing because that's basically Rama's finishing move, is just crushing people because, even though he's jacked, he's still a Hutt. So yeah, he's literally going to throw his weight around, but dumb tish. So, backing up the style here a little bit. Legacy is another part of it because there's, especially with Rama, because he's trying not to be his dad. He wants to do anything but be his dad. And the Mandalorian is trying to make sure that he's left Grogu ready to, move on without him eventually, especially since Grogu is definitely going to outlive him. We know that because, Yoda died when he was 900 plus years old. So, and I would also say dedication is another one that we see in here because we have characters, particularly Mando and Grogu, who will basically do anything for each other. And they go through a lot for each other in this movie. And especially with Grogu, it's astonishing to see what lengths he will go in order to save Mando's life. So, it's a little bit funny at points too in his efforts to do that. We get to see some interesting side characters in it. Like there's this lizard man who lives out in the basically the swamp area of this planet who helps him out a little bit and things like that. So there's a lot of cool stuff like that throughout the movie. So it definitely has plenty of heart, but that's something you know when you're going into this. If you're a fan of the show, if you know Dave Filoni, if you know Jon Favreau, you know exactly what to expect, what you're going to get out of this, because this is basically an original creation of the two of them. And Jon Favreau is an excellent director. He knows what he's doing with this. Probably one of the, in terms of like your popular, directors, he's one of the better ones out there, I would say, currently. I mean, the guy helped launch the MCU with the original Iron Man back in 2008. That tells you exactly what you're going to get. All right, so this has gone on longer than I was expecting, but in the end, is this going to save Star Wars? I don't know. Is it a big enough, great enough, crazy enough movie to be the grand return of Star Wars to the big screen? Unfortunately, no. It does still feel like something that should have just been on Disney Plus, but that's also because the television has gotten to the point where it's almost indistinguishable from movies anymore. And that's the issue with this. It's not big enough to be the grand return. And even though I think on its own in isolation, it's good and it is worth the support of Star Wars fans, the franchise has been so damaged and the fans have been so soured. I think they would rather see this fail, as opposed to make this a success, so that theoretically, especially now that Kathleen Kennedy is basically gone, as far as I know, you'll let them know this is what we want, not what you've been giving us. But as it stands, yeah, I judging by the box office numbers, I just don't think it's going to be that, which is unfortunate because it's better than it doesn't deserve to be the sacrificial lamb on the altar of burning down Star Wars, but nobody hates Star Wars like Star Wars fans, which is unfortunate. So my verdict is thumbs up. Go see it, particularly if you're a fan of the TV show. You'll get a lot out of it. I think you'll enjoy it. And it's not nearly as bad as I think people were expecting it to be and want it to be. So there you go. Anyway, if you've gotten through this entire video, thanks a lot. If you've enjoyed it, check out my author website, nathanjsmarchand.com, where you can keep up with all the updates that I have for whatever it is that I'm working on and I'm writing. I've got some anthologies that I'm contributing to and a couple of books that I'm working on right now. I've sent off a couple of essays, and I'm in the process of finishing up a short story for Wild Hunt Press for their Attack of the Kaiju and Wrath of the Titans. No, not Wrath of the Titans. I can't remember what the other one. It's a little bit off, but it's for Wild Hunt Press. So be on the lookout for that. And you will also see me for sure at G-Fest, and hopefully next month, and then hopefully a couple weeks after that at Gen Con in Indianapolis. G-Fest is in Chicago. I'm still on the waiting list to be at Authors Avenue. I haven't gotten a yes yet, which is mildly annoying, but that's a whole other to-do. Anyway, be on the lookout for that, and also check out my podcasts, The Monster Island Film Vault and Henshin Power V3, particularly if you're a fan of Henshin Heroes, Kaiju, and Tokusatsu. All right, all the shameless self-promotion is finished. This is the way.